Do you have a personal favorite repair you like to do?
That's a great question. I feel like, it's sort of boring, but doing disc brakes is my favorite repair simply because it's tangible. It can have some challenges to it, but it's pretty straightforward. And I feel like it's something that I know what I'm doing. And, it becomes your favorite because you feel competent and confident in doing it.
It's safe to say this isn't the type of conversation we normally have with the founder of a nonprofit. But there aren't many people like Kathy Hine. Today we'll hear her story and that of Lift Garage, the nonprofit she founded to provide affordable car repair for those in need. This is Crazy Good Turns. We tell inspiring stories about people who do amazing things for others, and I'm your host, Brad Shaw.
I grew up in a little tiny town called Oshen, Iowa. It's a town of 800 people in the far northeast corner of Iowa, a farming community. I did not grow up on a farm, but farming was all around us. I'm the youngest of 7 children, and so everything was done communally. So I grew up really with a sense of taking care of each other because we had to. My folks didn't have a lot of money. So lots and lots of hand-me-downs, and I always like to tell the story about when my hand-me-down bell-bottom jeans got caught in the chain of the hand-me-down bike because it didn't have a chain guard, and so it was that sense of kind of communal sharing.
Kathy's oldest brother was born with Down syndrome. The way her parents cared for him growing up set an example for how she wanted to live her own life.
It was the mid-1950s in a small town in Iowa, and people with Down syndrome or other developmental disabilities in those days were often institutionalized, and that's not a choice my parents made. And that really spoke volumes to me about we take care of each other, no matter if we don't know what we're doing, but we're going to take care of each other. And it was all very much this sense of we're going to treat everybody who is different exactly the same because that was our household experience.
Kathy majored in social work and religious studies in college, an experience that solidified her calling.
It was really during college that some of those values that I grew up with really took root in a different direction. I was really able to put them in a context of a bigger world around homelessness, around poverty, around women's rights issues, feminism, other justice issues, and really look at them from a systematic perspective. And so things began to take a different shape for me in those years about my understanding of how we need to be in the world, in my opinion, how we need to take care of each other, but how we need to cry out for justice at every opportunity that we are able to.
Did you ever consider like a more traditional career as opposed to something in social work and philanthropy?
Much to my father's chagrin, no. He was very concerned about my financial well-being, but for good or for ill, that hasn't mattered to me all that much. I just have always felt called to be in with people.
After Kathy graduated from college, she spent several years leading youth ministries. Then she took a break, jumped in a VW van, and drove across the country for 6 months to visit different volunteer programs she might want to work for. She ended up in eastern Kentucky doing community work. After about a year, she moved again to Minneapolis, where many of her college friends landed after school. So you stayed in Minneapolis and became a social worker, correct?
Yes. So then I spent about 2.5 years working for a nonprofit that still provides low-cost, or actually free legal services to low-income folks. I did intakes. I worked with the clients in need of legal assistance, and I went through their story, did the intake with them, and then matched them up with a volunteer lawyer.
After 2.5 years on the job, Kathy became Director of Social Justice at a small Catholic church in South Minneapolis called St. Stephen's. It was here that she saw the need for what would become Lift Garage.
We had a shelter for homeless men, and the beds were given away by lottery. And as you might imagine, there were often not enough. There were often more people needing a bed than there were beds available. So what I saw happening time and again is guys were hanging on to these old, beat-up, crappy cars because they would use them as a shelter alternative when they didn't get a bed.
In many cases, the cars wouldn't run at all and had to be pushed from parking spot to avoid getting towed.
Regularly, the guys would be knocking on my office door. Miss Kathy, my car's been sitting in the same spot for too long, but it doesn't start. But can you help me push it around the corner? So we'd go out and we'd push it around the corner, and then 3 or 4 or 5 days later, Miss Kathy, I need to push it back around the corner. And so I spent a good deal of time doing that, but the conversations would be like, well, if you're going to keep this car, maybe you should get it fixed or get it running. Well, I don't have any money for that. It's too expensive. There's too many, even just to get it figured out what's wrong is too expensive.
Kathy saw time and again how people struggled to find affordable car repair and how that had a domino effect on their lives.
The details were different, but the story was largely the same. I just got my family out of shelter. We have an apartment in Minneapolis. I got a job. I work second shift, but it's way out in Chaska, which is a distant suburb here. There's no bus that runs on Saturday night at 11 o'clock when I get off. If I don't have this car running, I'm not going to be able to get to work, and I'm going to lose my job. And if I lose my job, we're going to lose the apartment, and I'm going to be back in the shelter with my family. And I just kept thinking that, this seems like a solvable problem. We should be able to provide car care at an affordable rate. And so those scenarios were happening a lot simultaneously, and it just, I kept thinking about that we needed a low-cost car repair place in town.
Kathy started looking into existing programs that offered low-cost car repair, but she couldn't find anything that really changed the equation and the dynamic that she saw playing out every day. So in 2008, she did something that most people would never consider.
I was teaching basic mechanical at Dunwoody, and I was looking over my class roster, and women are not that predominant in the automotive technician industry. And as I was looking at my roster, I saw the name Kathy. And it's like, oh, good, we've got a female student. That's awesome. Because I believe that we need more of a presence to help make it a better industry, just me personally. And so I'm looking at it, and then I looked up and I saw, well, no, wait a minute. That lady doesn't look like your traditional, student out of high school. She looks a little bit older than what I expected. And it's like, okay.
That's right. Kathy enrolled in a 2-year Associate of Science program in automotive technology at Dunwoody College of Technology in Minneapolis. That was her instructor, Dave Duval.
I went through my roster, called out her name, and she had the appearance of being a little intimidated, but did she prove me and the rest of that class wrong. She was a force to be reckoned with when it came to respecting and giving respect, because she was determined.
Did you think you were going to start a nonprofit at that point, or did you just want to find a way to help?
I just wanted to find a way to help. My God, no. If I'd have thought I was starting a nonprofit, I would have ran screaming. It's a lot of work. And so mostly I was thinking, and I'm not really clear what I was thinking. Some would argue I wasn't thinking. But I mostly thought, well, if I learn some skills, I might be able to at least start by fixing some cars in my driveway every Saturday or something like that. And maybe it'll lead to something, or maybe I can then, offer those skills to somebody else who's going to start a nonprofit or do something more with it. But it wasn't really my intention to do what's now, to create what is now, the Lift Garage.
As determined as Kathy was, she found the experience difficult on many levels, at least at first.
I walked into a classroom, so I was 38 at the time when I went back to automotive school. I walked into a classroom of about 40 other students. All of them were 18 or 19, and about 38 of those, so there was about 40 others, 38 of them were boys. So there's two 18-year-old girls who subsequently dropped out before the second quarter. So right away, there was that. There was a huge gender disparity, a huge age disparity. And I understand, I think, why it's done this way, but it felt a little like I imagine boot camp might in terms of the tenor of things. So a lot of barking, and they only called you by your last name, and just a lot of a lot of hollering happened, and I thought, where am I? I'm coming out of church work and social service work, and I'm like, can't we just talk about how we're feeling? Why do you have to be so angry?
The program was so daunting, she considered bailing altogether.
Genuinely, I can think of 3 times for sure in that first quarter that I sat in tears at the end of the day in the classroom and thinking, I can't I can't do this. This was stupid. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that I can't do it. I'm embarrassed that I thought I could. I don't need to do this.
But Dave saw Kathy's potential and deeply respected her motivation for learning his trade. He did everything he could to encourage and help guide her.
He would regularly sit down with me and talk to me and help me work through my specific frustration, but also provide a huge amount of encouragement of, you can do this. I believe you can do this. I will help you do this. I'm going to make sure you walk across that stage in 2 years. And I will do everything in my power to do that and to walk with you every step of the way, whatever you need. And I think of that often in deep gratitude, of course, because he was true to his word.
Kathy did walk across that stage 2 years later and earned her degree in automotive technology. She wasn't sure how to apply her new skills to the needs she saw in her day job. But Kathy knew she needed real-world experience fixing cars to even have a shot. So did you go to work as a mechanic someplace then?
I did. So I was still working at St. Stephen's Human Services this whole time, but then I picked up a very part-time job at a Sears Auto Center. It was always very interesting because my job at St. Stephen's was doing public policy work. So I was at the Capitol a lot, bringing people experiencing homelessness and poverty to testify about different bills and proposed legislation that would affect their lives. And the Sears Auto Center where I worked was literally a block from the Capitol. So there were many days where I would be at the Capitol, testifying or helping people testify in front of the legislature, and then I'd walk a block and change out of my dress clothes into an oil uniform and start changing oil and tires and batteries. And I thought, how did my life get here exactly?
For 2 years, Kathy worked her 2 jobs, 30 hours a week at St. Stephen's and about 20 a week as a mechanic at Sears. All the while, she was developing plans for some sort of program to offer more affordable car care.
So those years are sort of a blur to me. But again, I wasn't really sure if we were opening a full-out shop. I was looking into maybe we would do a mobile repair van or something that was much less effort initially. And so I was putting together a board of directors and having a lot of coffee and a lot of conversations with people. I made a list on a yellow legal pad, which I wish I would have kept, but I did not. On one side, I listed the types of people that I thought I should talk to, so lawyers and city council people and nonprofit directors and garage owners and mechanics and on and on and on.
The very first board member she recruited was Dave Duval.
Talk about being part of something special. So I just kind of, encouraged, like I said earlier, and helped, and I said, I want to be part of this. It's going to take more than just you, and she knew that too. So we surrounded ourselves with a bunch of people that are smarter than us with regard to lawyers and corporate executives and all kinds of people that sit on our board today.
By December of 2012, Kathy had decided to open a full-on garage. Given all the work she and her team had to accomplish, she targeted a launch date that was more than a year out. Then a phone call jump-started their effort.
I get a call from an acquaintance of mine who is running a shop and has 3 bays. And she said, well, I heard what you're trying to do, and for a variety of reasons, we're looking for a subletter, and we need a little extra income, and I think you should come and sublet a bay from us, and starting in January. And I was like, yeah, no, thank you. That was very kind of you to think of us. No. So we hang up, the holidays go by. Right after the new year, I get a call from her again. And she's like, no, really, I think you should sublet a bay from us. Yeah, no, really, we don't have a phone, we don't have insurance, we have no idea who we're going to serve, we don't, the list of things we didn't have was pages and pages long. So again, I thanked her and we hung up. 2 weeks later, she called back. Said, no, really. And so then something clicked in my head, and it was basically like, hey, dummy, the door's open, walk through it. Here's the door. You're not ready, but here it is.
Kathy took her friend up on her offer and scrambled to get insurance, raise donations, and apply for grants. And on April 13, 2013, 2 days after quitting her day jobs, she opened the doors of Lift Garage for the first time. The concept was simple. Use donations and grants to subsidize the cost of labor and parts in order to offer dramatically cheaper, quality car repair to people who met income eligibility requirements. Early on, Kathy and Dave did most of the repairs themselves in the 3 bays they leased. They charged $15 per hour for labor versus an average of $100 or more, and they sold their parts at cost, a pricing structure that remains in place today. They were only open Saturdays at first. Within weeks, they were booked out for 3 months.
While the Twin Cities is growing in its public transit, we still have a long way to go, and it's still really difficult to get places on public transit. And so we are still largely a car, vehicle-dependent city to even get your basic needs met. And so we have people who are trying to get to work, find a job, get their kids to school, daycare, all of that, trying to get groceries on the table, trying to take care of grandkids so that your kids can hold down their jobs and be able to make a living, get into medical appointments yourself or, again, your children, getting yourself or kids to school. So many needs that happen on a daily basis for all of us. But again, so folks are just trying to hold all those pieces together. It's simply our hope that we can ease somebody's burden a little bit to enable them to hold their lives together.
Today, Lift Garage has 4 bays, 4 full-time paid techs, and 4 paid office staff, including Kathy. They also have a mobile repair van and offer free pre-purchase car inspections and free car care classes. Since their launch in 2013, they've completed more than 1,300 repairs and saved their customers more than $500,000. An important part of Kathy's operating philosophy at Lift Garage is to treat her mechanics and staff as well as they treat their customers.
One of our missions is to help keep or move people out of poverty, and it makes no logical sense and certainly no ethical sense to pay your workers poverty wages if you're trying to move others out of poverty. That's we've always tried to practice that. Even when we didn't have a lot of money, we tried to pay a living wage. And we have since added a health care benefit in which we pay 75% of the premium. We provide dental and life and disability insurance at no cost to the employee, and we just added a retirement plan.
Kathy says she doesn't spend as much time fixing cars as she used to now that she's got an actual organization to run and funds to raise. But Dave confirmed she's still a damn good mechanic.
She pays attention to detail, is what she does. And that honestly is what the key is to any automotive technician, is that as long as you pay attention to the details and fix it right the first time, you're going to be a good technician, and Kathy does that.
And those traits that make Kathy such a good mechanic are the same ones that shape her view of how we should all treat each other. We're called Crazy Good Turns, meaning doing good things for other people. What's your advice to our listeners who want to help other people but just don't know how to start?
Pay attention, I think, is the first thing. There are loads of needs around you, I promise. And they might be big and systemic, or they might be your elderly neighbor who you haven't seen in a while, or who doesn't get any visitors, or whose kids don't call. And so pay attention, and then figure out what you can do. And that's going to be different on different days and at different points in your life, depending on if you've got kids or elderly parents to take care of or 3 jobs that you're working. But there's always a need around you, and you have an ability to respond to that need, I promise. And even if it's not a talent you think you have, take a step. And again, it might be as simple as, I'm going to make my neighborhood better because I'm going to knock on my elderly neighbor's door and just check in on them and maybe go visit them once a week. It can be that. You can start there. So pay attention. That's what I would say.
I'm Brad Shaw, and thanks for listening to this episode of Crazy Good Turns. Go to crazygoodturns.org to learn more about or donate to Lift Garage. You can also submit your ideas for extraordinary people or organizations we should feature, and stay connected with us between episodes by following us on Facebook and Twitter. This season, we're excited to announce that we're giving a $50,000 grant to the nonprofit that does the most to creatively spread their Crazy Good Turn story, a virtuous and self-reinforcing circle of gratitude. We'll announce the grant recipient at the end of this season. Crazy Good Turns is audio engineered by Stephen Keefe. Music supervision and mixing by Score in Los Angeles. Research and editing by Martine Chaussard. And a special thanks to Megan Basinger.
We did it because enough of us said, hey, let's take some steps together to see what we can do about this. We did it because we said the damn door is opening, walk through it. We did it because the community came around and said, absolutely, we need to do this. And so that just the existence and the work and the faith that it has taken to get us here is, I just feel really, really proud of that.